Let's take a look at V-Ray materials. Open the editor and the navigator. Convert this paint material from standard to V-Ray. Change the diffuse color to nearly white. Reflection is handled all right here. Notice that there are no graphs like you'd see in some of the other materials that ship with 3ds Max. It's all parameters and checkboxes and so on. You can control the reflection amount with this color. Pure black means it's not reflecting. I'm going to make this material reflect slightly just by increasing the value ever so slightly. I'll change the glossiness down to 0.2 because this is a relatively matte surface with this white paint. I'll go on to the next material, and this one has a gradient ramp both in diffuse color and bump. I'll drag the gradient ramp out and put it in the slot below. Then I'll go up to the original material and convert the type to V-Ray. I'll drag the map into the diffuse channel. And I'd also like to put that in the bump channel. I'll go down to the maps rollout and drag the same map into the bump channel. Now this material represents the metal roof. I'd like to make it slightly reflective. Be careful not to go overboard here because it's very sensitive with reflection. And I'll set the glossiness down to 0.2. It's a relatively matte surface as well. I'll go on to the next material. This one has a diffuse map. And I'll do much the same process. Converting, remapping any maps that you have, changing the reflectivity. This time I think this surface will be a little bit more glossy. I'm going to double click on the sample slot to get a bigger view of it. I'll increase the reflection amount, maybe a little more, and change the glossiness to 0.6. And we can see a specular highlight now. The quality of the glossiness is set by the subdivisions. Higher is more quality, but it takes longer to render. You can use interpolation to speed things up, but you'll have a lower quality then. I'll use it. Now down here, under the BRDF rollout, which stands for Bidirectional Reflectance Distribution Function, it's a fancy term that means it's a custom shader. You can set up your shader right here. You can choose an algorithm for that. You can set the anisotropy, positive or negative, and that will shape the highlight. You can also reorient the highlight in different ways. BRDF is the most sophisticated type of shader because you can map real-world materials very accurately using this method. I'll go on to the next material. Here we have the multi-sub object with standard materials. I think I'm just going to leave that alone as it is. Maybe I'll check out the glass, and actually this can use an update. I'm going to change the opacity to 10% to make it look more like glass, and I'll turn this up and make it glossier. You'll find that V-Ray materials do not have an opacity control. And let me just talk about that here on the next one. This is just a flat black material. I'll convert it to V-Ray. And this material just needs to be darker and that's pretty much it. But if you wanted to make it transparent, you would do so by changing the refraction amount. There's no opacity or transparency control. That's set by the amount of refraction. Because if something is refracting light, then the light is bending through it, and thus it is somewhat transparent. If I increase the refraction, then we're able to see through the material. See the preview? In this case, it's got to be black. You can also simulate translucency, where the light penetrates to some distance within the material here. There's just one more material to repurpose. I'll convert its type and then drag the map in. And in this case, I'll increase the reflection a bit and change the glossiness to maybe 0.4 to make it a little bit glossy, but I don't want to have a specular highlight. I just want to have it be kind of diffuse, and that looks good. And I can also put that in the bump channel, make it just a little bit more realistic. Another way to do that is simply to drag it from one channel to the other within this rollout and instance it. That gives it just a little bit of surface relief. So there you have it. It's pretty straightforward to convert your materials to V-Ray.